I'm going to call the Planning Board meeting of June the 13th, 2017 to order. Please rise for a Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. To the board members, I would like to read the Ethics Awareness and Conflict of Interest reminder. In accordance with the State Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every board member to avoid conflicts of interest. Does any board member have any known conflict of interest with respect to any matters coming before the board today? If so, please identify the conflict and refrain from any participation in that particular matter involved.
Not necessarily a conflict, but regarding PB 9449, I have received multiple emails from homeowners from Spindrift and the Pines, so Pine Island. I don't think it's going to impact my decision, though.
I think we probably all have.
Yes.
Email's been busy. Thank you. We do have a quorum tonight with 7 members present. I entertain a motion for approval of agenda.
Motion to approve.
Madam Chair, staff would like to request a modification to the agenda. We'd like to move item C, the Moyoc Mega Site Master Plan, to item B, and item B, Currituck County Housekeeping Amendment, to item C.
Okay, thank you, Donovan. Donovan.
I
changed your name.
I'd like to modify my motion, Madam Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to accept the agenda as changed, switching B and C's order.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Thank you. Hopefully you have had an opportunity to read the minutes of our May 9th meeting. At this time, I will entertain a motion for approval of those minutes.
I so motion.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those approved say aye.
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 Any opposition? The motion carries. Thank you. We have no old business, so we will begin with our new business, which is PB 94-49, the Currituck Club PUD. Request for a zoning map amendment to include 2 existing open space parcels in the Currituck Club PUD overlay. And Jenny, you might go ahead and begin with your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to cover it.
Jenny.
I'm going to cover it tonight.
This is Ben Woody, in case anybody doesn't know.
I've been called lots of things, so it's okay. So what you have tonight is an application for a zoning map amendment. This is somewhat of a complex background and procedural issue, but what the Planning Board is going to consider is the incorporation of these parcels that are highlighted in blue into the Currituck Club Plan Unit Development Overlay. The Plan Unit Development Overlay is a zoning designation that existed in the previous UDO, so before 2013. That particular zoning designation doesn't exist in the new UDO, except that we transitioned the old overlay zoning districts into our new UDO. So what you're doing is you're considering the expansion of a PUD overlay with the Currituck Club, which was established probably more than 20 years ago as a PUD. And so it's procedurally a little different than what we normally do. And what I want to point out to the Planning Board before we get started is back when the overlays existed, the PUD overlays in the previous ordinance, it was a little quirky, the process in which they were applied. So the board at that time would establish the zoning overlay as a legislative matter, which is what you're recommending tonight. And then they would follow that up with the adoption of a sketch plan and a use permit. As the planning board is well aware of, use permits are quasi-judicial matters, and those are only heard by the Board of Commissioners. So tonight, you're going to make consideration on the expansion of the Currituck Club PUD overlay to these two parcels. You'll recommend either for or against that, and then that item, along with your recommendation, will move forward to the Board of Commissioners, at which time they will make a decision on the overlay as well as the sketch plan and the use permit. So what makes it odd is the sketch plan and the use permit is the mechanism in which a range of allowable uses is established. So you're literally considering the expansion of the overlay for these two parcels, and really whatever the uses may be will occur as part of that sketch plan use permit at the Board of Commissioner meeting. So under our current ordinance, things don't track like this as two separate applications, but this is where we're at, and this is what you're tasked with tonight. So as you hear your testimony, you're going to have to make an effort to sit in your legislative capacity and really consider the expansion of the overlay, not necessarily some of the other things that will come up. And again, not to say you can't hear those and decide how they impact your legislative decision, but I just want to make sure the planning board understands, as well as the audience, what your role is. So with that, you can see in these two parcels are zoned single-family Outer Banks. So the zoning of these two parcels are single-family Outer Banks. This is in what was previously known as the Oceans subdivision. It was a 5-lot subdivision that was platted. Two of the parcels you see, and what is confusing because the parcel on the left side of the screen, the western parcel, actually is intersected by NC 12, but it's still considered one contiguous parcel. So when I say a parcel, that's what I mean. And of course, the other parcel's on the ocean front. Those two parcels are owned by the Currituck Club Property Owners Association. They have historically been used by the Currituck Club Property Owners Association for about 20 years. The parcel on the left, or the western parcel, includes a trolley stop, so it's where the visitors to the Currituck Club or guests are delivered to, as well as the Surf Shack, which is a series of buildings that provide recreational equipment and then concession-type services. And, of course, on the eastern margin, that parcel is also owned by the Currituck Club Property Owners Association, and that's essentially the beach. So that's really mostly in the public trust area. And what they're requesting in this application is that both those items be included in the Currituck Club Plan Unit Development Overlay. So what I'm going to, real quickly, and I'm going to kind of put this to kind of put this to rest off the top. When we review the definitions of not only the Plan Unit Development, but the Plan Unit Development Overlay specifically, our opinion is that the Plan Unit Development Overlay must be comprised of contiguous parcels. So my presentation from this point forward is going to solely focus on the western property where the Surf Shack is, because that is in fact contiguous to existing Currituck Club Plan Unit Development Overlay. And you can see the eastern property that represents the oceanfront is not contiguous, and therefore staff's opinion is that cannot be included as part of this recommendation, or it can be, but our opinion is it shouldn't properly be included and added to the PUD overlay. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the oceanfront parcel, other than to say that our opinion is there's no precedent for including non-contiguous parcels into a PUD. So I'm going to focus on the Surf Shack. And what brought us to tonight is on February 3rd, 2017, the county received a request for a violation investigation. The violation alleged that, among other things, that the Surf Shack was being used illegally as a commercial property. The violation also alleged that the trolley service was also an illegal commercial trolley service. Staff did an investigation, and what we concluded in a letter of determination is that the UDO only allows structures and open space to be used for passive or active recreational purposes, and we determined that the Surf Shack was a commercial facility that rents recreational equipment and sells snacks and drinks. However, it is not a structure that is used for recreational purposes. So the staff issued this determination. It was appealed by the Currituck Club to the Board of Adjustment. I don't think they agree with our interpretation, and you'll probably get more explanation on that during their testimony or their hearing tonight. But what the parties agreed to do is give them time to pursue a legislative remedy. So the Currituck Club is asking to incorporate this parcel into the PUD overlay, and then through the sketch plan, use permit process, establish an allowable use. So they're trying to make the surf shack permitted properly under the PUD overlay zoning district. So that's the process we're in tonight. They're going through this legislative action. And one thing that's in your, and I'm going to step forward a little bit here. One thing in your staff report is, one thing you'll have to consider is zoning map amendment review standards. So the ordinance outlines about 11 standards that you can use, that you may use. It's a permissive word, may use as a basis for considering zoning map amendment to rezonings. Staff's provided those in your report. We've added some commentary on some of those that we think are applicable. Again, I think you'll hear more of that from both sides tonight. But as you work through this process, keep in mind your zoning map review standards. Also, another thing you have to do in your recommendation is include a consistency statement, and that is the extent to which these two parcels, again, the request is two parcels, but the extent to which they are or are not consistent with the land use plan. Staff's analysis of the land use plan finds that expanding the PD overlay to the surf shack parcel is consistent with the land use plan, so we don't see an issue in terms of land use plan consistency. I'm not going to read all the staff rationale, but that is also in your staff report. I'm sure you familiarized yourself with that. Additionally, part of what staff determined in terms of the reasonableness and public interest, we do acknowledge that the surf shack has been owned by the Currituck Club POA. They have used that parcel and that building as an amenity for the guests of the Currituck Club, so we also acknowledge the fact that there is some historical use of that surf shack property that's occurred over many years. The TRC, the Technical Review Committee, is recommending conditional approval of the expansion of the PUD overlay to the surf shack parcel. And we've added some conditions of our recommendation. Again, as an overlay, you can't necessarily put conditions onto the overlay zoning district, but we are recommending approval with conditions related to our recommendation. I want to read through those for the record. One is that the application complies with all the applicable review standards of the UDO. That's part of what you're going to walk through tonight in your analysis. The second condition, that parcel 127E open 0001, and that's the oceanfront parcel, shall not be included in the overlay because it's not contiguous to the existing PUD overlay. The third condition, the staff, is that the applicant shall submit an amended sketch plan and use permit application, which they have, to be reviewed and approved by the Board of Commissioners to establish the allowable uses. So what we're saying with that is that we're recommending expansion of the overlay, but we're also advising that the use permit and the sketch plan will ultimately establish whatever the allowable uses are, because when we get to that conversation with the Board of Commissioners, a commercial zoning that allows a fast food restaurant is very different than a zoning that allows a recreational building. So we want to be clear that when we get into the uses at the next step with the board, staff will have more commentary on that element of it. With that, I can answer any questions that the board has now or after the public hearing or the public meeting comments are given.
And I have a question. You said the piece that's on the west side of the highway is the one parcel. That little triangular piece that's stuck in the corner, is that part of the western piece?
It is. All those three pieces that are clustered on the western side of the screen, or the left side of the screen, they're connected by tie bars. So, I mean, they're separated by right-of-ways, but they have one parcel ID number.
All three of those?
All three of those. And our definition in the UDO of contiguous says that to be contiguous, an intervening right-of-way doesn't affect that. So you can have a contiguous parcel, or contiguousness can exist even if parcels are separated by right-of-way, and that's by definition.
Okay, so the right-of-way is the Highway 12?
Correct. And Yopon Lane.
And the Yopon Lane?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Is the Yopon Lane a public right-of-way
It's
to those other properties?
It's
back
private.
behind that?
It's a private right-of-way. It's basically a cul-de-sac that the Currituck Club trolley service uses to deliver their guests and owners.
Well, I'm talking about the house that's back behind that.
Remember these lots were created from the Ocean subdivision, so there are 5 lots that exist, 3 of those being houses.
Okay, I see, okay. The one house, the tennis courts, and then the other house.
Correct. And those
Okay.
are private houses. That's
Yeah,
correct.
They
So
don't have anything to do with Currituck Club.
they do not to my knowledge.
Okay.
I guess it wouldn't hurt. Just a question for however y'all do. Are we being recorded?
I believe this is streamed live.
Okay, because I didn't.
We don't see any
Don't
red
see a
light on the
light.
camera down on the end down there.
And normally there's a red light on.
I see green lights on all the cameras. I don't know.
The motor is not working. We've had issues with that, but it is being recorded from the back.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Okay, at this time, we will open the public hearing. I need for you to understand how the public hearing takes place. The applicant and persons in support of the request have a total of 20 minutes to present their proposal and make comments. Persons in opposition of the request have a total of 20 minutes to make their comments. The applicant then has a total of 5 minutes for rebuttal. And you will be timed, and we are going to try our best to stick to the 20 minutes. I have asked our secretary that if the board interrupts someone who is speaking, she'll stop the clock on that because we should not interfere with the applicant or the opposition because we have a question.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
sorry. Could I go check the recorder in the back just to make sure?
Certainly.
I just want to make sure it is going.
I'm not going to do my part again if it's not. So,
How come?
Madam Chair.
I say I could insist that you do it.
I would do it if you insisted.
But I won't. We good? Yes. All righty. Okay, the first person I have signed up speaking in favor of this is Eric Remington. Please state your name, address.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Eric Remington. I'm with the law firm of Ford Smith in New Bern, North Carolina.
We're going.
Thank you.
Time started, but the monitor's not on. I can't.
Oh. Stop it. Dawn, do you know how to work that monitor?
Technical difficulties, don't you love them?
Is Justin's been?
All right. Okay. I'm gonna try to use this monitor to be able to talk and go. Again, my name is Eric Remington. I'm with the law firm of Ward and Smith, and I'm from the city of New Bern. I represent the Currituck Club in this matter, and we're here tonight on, as Ben said, a application for a rezoning map amendment. And what I'd like to do is take you through some slides. I've also If you'll notice on your desk, I put a binder of material which has a hard copy of our presentation, and you can look at that also and follow along. But everything should be up on the screen. The first video there that's a picture of the vicinity map that shows the area, and it shows similar to what Ben had shown on the maps that he had. You'll see the parcel to the west near Highway 12, and then the parcel out on the beach. And what we're asking the planning board to do is update the Currituck Club PUD map to reflect the ownership and historical permitted use of the private beach club that the Currituck Club has used on this property, and the related Oceanside parcel by TCC POA. The Currituck Club's beach club facilities provide food, beverage, beach equipment, rental services, and qualified individuals for recreational purposes. And so these are some pictures of what we're talking about out there. I don't know how many of you all have been out to the Currituck Club to see this, but this is what is known as the Surf Shack. It is the beach club for the Currituck Club. This is another view of the beach club parcel, and shows the Surf Shack from the front. These are an area where we have picnic tables and games are played at the Surf Shack. That's to the east toward the beach. And this shot is of the area that's underneath the shelter where there are picnic tables for people to eat their lunch, recreation areas. And then we have additional picnic areas on the west side of the building, which are toward the street, away from the ocean side. And that has also more picnic tables and things for people to enjoy their lunch and other refreshments that they get when they come up from the beach. This picture is a picture of the trolley stop that we have. It shows the Yalton Lane, and then it also shows the valet service that we provide, which is off to the left there. I'm sorry, to the right. And then this picture is just another view of that, looking from the recreation area where the picnic tables are that I showed before. This picture is a view of the beach parcel, looking from the south side of the beach access over into where our beach parcel is. That picture was taken on Saturday about a little bit after noon time. And then this picture is a picture looking up the beach access from the beach parcel area. The beach club, the Currituck Club Beach Club is and the Currituck Club is a sound to ocean property community. The Currituck Club promotes tourism in Currituck County and contributes to the prosperity of local businesses, increasing the county's tax revenue. Unlike other beach clubs in the area, the Currituck Club Beach Club is a private recreational facility, and this is one of the reasons why we believe the determination that was made by the county staff was wrong. It does not sell memberships to the public for profit, and it has been operated in that location since 2000. There's unlimited use. The use of that particular space is limited to members of the Currituck Club and their guests, members of the Oceans, which is those three houses that are there in that community, and then the Spindrift owners and guests. It is not open to the general public, and there are wristbands that are required in order to be able to use it. So again, we do not believe that this is a commercial facility. We believe that it is essentially a concession stand. In December of 2010, this property was permitted, and there was a zoning compliance permit and building permit that was issued in order to establish the second building that's on this property. But this property has been permitted for these uses since 2000. In January of 2011, the county determined that the building use was in zoning compliance with the permitted use of amenity guest services for the Currituck Club. And this is just a copy out of the page which shows that there was a zoning official determination that basically found that this property was zoned and was in compliance. Now, some of the standards that you all need to consider for tonight are basically, there's 11 of them. But one of the issues I want to talk about first is this contiguous issue. We believe that this property does not need to be, the ocean part does not need to be contiguous in order to be included in our PUD. And the reason that we believe that is because that the 2013 UDO definition talks about a master plan development being under unified control. And it's clear that these two parcels are under unified control because they're basically used in tandem with each other. One is the beach club, and the other is the actual recreation area out on the beach where people go to recreate. So they're under unified control of the Currituck Club. The 1992 UDO also says that no area of less than 10 acres, contiguous acres, can be included in a PUD. And what that means to us is that you have to have at least 10 acres of contiguous land. Well, we certainly do, because our PUD on the western side of the road has 587 acres of land and stuff. So the fact that these two parcels have been used by the Currituck Club for 20 plus years, when the Currituck Club was developed, they were developed to be used with that parcel for access to the beach and also as a beach club. And so historically, these parcels were connected with the beach club. And I've got Bob Godley here who's going to speak to you a little bit more about that later. It's also connected. Ben said and I hope you were listening when Ben was talking, he said that the right-of-way, Highway 12, even though it splits parcels, they can still be contiguous. And he said the reason that is because it's a right-of-way. Well, the public beach access is a right-of-way also. It's there for the public to use, and it is an access that is similar to Highway 12. And so these parcels actually are connected by the beach access. They are contiguous in that route. We also don't believe that there's any requirement in the PUD that says that county access can't be included in two PUDs. And so we believe that it could, the county access could be included in our PUD as well as Pine Island's PUD. The county also, there's other reasons why we think that the contiguous part doesn't matter, but we do think that it could be contiguous based on the fact that there is this right-of-way, which is the beach access that connects the two properties. Personally, the thing that we think is more appropriate is the fact that these two parcels are used together, and we think that the county ought to include them in the PUD together at the same time. So let me talk about the 11 factors now a little bit. One of the first ones is that it's consistent with the land use plan and UDO. First of all, I'll say that the staff has said with the western part, they believe that it is. We believe that both parts are. And I've gone through some of them in there. First is that it supports the county management goal of maximizing public access to beach and public crosswalkers. The fact that we have this property on the eastern side of Highway 12 allows us to get to the beach and from the beach, and it allows us to transport our people to and from there, and allows them to get refreshments and things like that during the daytime. Policy PA1, public access to ocean is essential to the quality of life for residents and visitors. This property is absolutely essential to the Currituck Club. It is one of the main amenities of the Currituck Club, other than the golf course that's in there. But this is a primary one. People come to the beach, and so in order to be able to get to the beach, they have to have access, and the fact that there's a beach club there with concessions makes it that much more of an enjoyable experience for them. Policy PA2 is facilities shall accommodate means of handicap. The Currituck Club offers a service through a contract with the county where we transport handicapped individuals to and from the beach. That's their only means of access to the beach, and we provide that service free. The properties owned by Policy PA3, properties owned by the county, state, and other cooperating public agencies shall be considered as special opportunities for public access sites, and we believe that our property enhances that. Sand dune considerations under Policy E7, ES7, the TCPOA uses the county access, which has less impact on the dunes. We don't have other ways to go through to the beach, only through that public access, and so that's what we do. Neighboring subdivisions, however, like Pine Island PUD, have numerous private dune crossovers. Some of those are in disrepair, but between the county and us, the county access is kept in a neat condition. Policy TR18, transit services are encouraged. The beach club policy is used for the trolley stop, as Ben noted. On Yalpin Lane, what we do is we have a trolley that comes over, drops off people. People get refreshments at the beach club, and then they end up going out to the beach and utilize the beach area. Policy PR7 talks about handicapped persons again, and I already talked about that, so I won't cover Our use of the county access and those properties in conjunction with each other actually improves public safety by ensuring that because we have staff people there, and the people that come out there are close to where the lifeguards are and things like that, so we think it enhances public safety. With regard to the UDO, it's fully consistent with a full-service land use area, and those are for some of the reasons that are stated up there. The beach club is a structure, and this is where we really disagree with the county, the staff's decision. We understand it, but we disagree with it. The club is specifically used for recreational purposes. There's no doubt about that, and it's only open to certain people. Section 7.13D of the UDO says that open spaces may have clubhouses, seating areas, tables, shelters, grills, and picnicking facilities. Now, I ask you to think about those pictures that I showed you at the beginning of this presentation. They have, the Surf Shack has all of those things. It meets all of that definition. Section 10.5, more importantly, there is no definition in the UDO for what a clubhouse is, but there is a definition for a club. And when you read that definition, it says that a club is a building. It's not a group of people, it's a building. Operated by an association, which in this case would be the Currituck Club, Property Owner Association, for social or recreational enrichment of members, and generally not for profit. This typically, the Currituck Club doesn't make any money off of this, except for they do rent it, they lease it to a vendor, but it is there for their people to use and there for them to get refreshments and things, and it fully satisfies that definition. The beach club is connected with the beach parcel through the fact that the primary use, again, is the recreational activities that are done on the beach. When people come up, it enhances that primary use because they can come up and get some refreshments while they're there. Section 10.44G, accessory uses in open areas, again, includes clubhouses. More importantly, it includes concessions, and if that's not a concession stand, it's not a convenience store, any retail store, or anything like that, it's a concession stand. If you go to a football game and you're out on a football field, there's a concession stand there. That's exactly what this is. And that's what, you can't have a bigger playground or a bigger recreation area than the beach and the ocean. That's the biggest pool that you can have. And that's what our people do, is they use these two properties in connection. Other plans and consistency with those, we've got the Connecting Parole Plan, and I'm not going to spend much time on that, but it basically enhances and makes access user-friendly and appealing. It supplements the county's facilities with regard to bath and parking, because there are bathrooms at the Surf Shack, and again, we provide handicap facilities, and we have the drop-off areas for people. Policy CC2 in the Connecting Corolla Plan ensures universal accessibility of the beach to all users, including the handicapped, and again, we've got drop-off areas. Some of these other policies, I'm going to skip over those because I don't want to run out of time here. It's required by change conditions. That's one of the most important factors that I think we need to consider tonight. The change conditions here are that this thing has been operating, it's been in use, it's been permitted, and we've been using it for the same purposes for the past 17 plus years. And what's happened is that the county came in and said, no, you can't use it for that purpose anymore. We think it's commercial use. So the reason that we're here is to try to alleviate that and try to work with the county in order to be able to do it. And so what we're asking the county to do is bring these two parcels into our PUD and then allow us to be able to use them for the purpose. We were informed that we should ask for commercial allocation, and now we've done that. We don't really care if it comes in as open space or if it comes in as a commercial use, as long as we can use it for the purposes that we've been using it for. This addresses a demonstrated community need. Certainly the Currituck Club has a need for this property, and it certainly makes this property, it is an amenity that certainly benefits the people in the Currituck Club, the three houses that are there at the Ocean Subdivision and the Spindrift Division. Compatibility with surrounding uses and appropriate zoning district for use land. The reasons that I just stated previously are all of the reasons why this is entirely consistent with a residential zoning. You need look no further than the Pine Island Club. They have a beach club that is similar to this. It has a pool, but ours doesn't, but it still does the same thing that ours does, and that is it provides people an area where they can go get refreshments when they come off the beach. And so there is, it is compatible with this. The Pine Island PUD is also, if you're looking for an example of non-contiguous property, Pine Island PUD is a good example. One is that their property is located on both sides of Highway 12, so it's separated by a right-of-way. But more importantly, there's a community within it, it's called Pine Island Reserve, that has been cut out of the Pine Island PUD. And therefore, it's not contiguous in two ways, north and south and east and west. So we would say, if theirs is not contiguous, there's been precedent for ours not to be contiguous. Well, again, the right-of-way that splits it would be the county's access, and so that connects them. It does not adversely impact land, and I'd like to call Bob Godley up. I've got about 4 minutes left, and I'll speak to that real quickly.
Hello. My name is Bob Godley. I've been an Outer Banks resident for 30 years. Been in the real estate business for 18 of which I've worked for TDL Cleaning Company, Vinyl Enterprises, which is a 50% partner in the development of the Currituck Club. Be glad to, since I've been at the Currituck Club for the last 18 years, to be glad to answer any questions. I'd like to state that the addition of the TCC POA owned Surf Shack and Beach Parcel to the TCC PUD will not adversely impact nearby lands or property values. I've been selling property in the Currituck Club and surrounding areas for 18 years. I've never once, in driving folks around, showing property around this area, had anybody raise a concern over the Surf Shack. It's the amenity that's been there for the use of the Currituck Club ever since I started in 1999. Also, I just wanted to say that the values in the Currituck Club, if you took that away, would be dramatically impacted in a negative fashion. And another thing I wanted to bring up that I'm not sure if a lot of you are aware, but I'm sure maybe Mr. Woody would be. We have, this is a map of the whole community, and we are boxed in. There's a spike strip that runs all along 12 here, and like a lot of areas and communities, we don't have walkways to get to the ocean. If you look at this northern section, there's not even an entrance to even get out because of this little strip that's owned by Coastal Realty. So to take away the organization of a beach trolley and a system to get to the beach would just be detrimental to the community. I mean, it's the only way to describe it. I mean, this is the way the folks that buy these homes and their guests get to the beach.
You don't happen to have one of those maps for us to see, do you?
Sure, you can have this.
Let me pass it.
Yeah, sure. This is this little strip right there. It's what's owned by Coastal Realty that runs all in. So they pretty much, other than right here and right here, this was purchased from Coastal Realty by the developer that I worked for, just to have this main entrance years ago, as well as this property that was developed that we're talking about.
So basically, again, there
Sir,
are criteria that are.
Your time is up.
Sorry, it's not.
It's not?
You're asking a question.
Oh, okay. I was confused. Sorry.
I'm sorry, basically there's other criteria. I think one of the things that we point out is that there are, that again, this property is utilized in connection and has been utilized in connection with the Currituck Club. We're not asking for anything new. We're not trying to change anything. What we're trying to do is preserve the use that we've had for the last 20 plus years. And we're asking, we'd ask that the board basically recommend approval of the application to include both the parcels. We've satisfied condition 1, and we've satisfied condition 3. We'd ask you not to reject condition number 2, which is the exclusion of the beach parcel. We'd ask you to include it because basically it is contiguous based on the right-of-way, and we also don't believe that it needs to be contiguous. Thank you.
Okay, board, questions for the applicant?
I have a question for Ben based on something the applicant said. How would approving or denying this impact their ability to transport people there?
The letter of determination the staff authored found that the trolley service was not an illegal commercial use. So I don't think this decision tonight prevents them from
That's what I thought. Yeah.
trolleying guests and residents to the Yopon Lane drop-off.
Okay. The question for the applicant, you stated several times that there's the amenity wasn't available to the general public, and that the valet service was for folks with disabilities. But we went down on Sunday, and nearly everybody that was using the amenities was just the general public, including myself and my family. And the valet service, although they did provide disabled trafficking down to the beach, they also provided service for entire families that were waiting in a long line.
A question or
Well, I mean, your comment was that the shack doesn't service the general public, and that the valet service is only for the handicap, and neither of those statements are true.
well, no, they are true. It may be a policing issue, and we're trying to address that. And we're trying to address that with rules and by training of the staff and things like that to make sure that those things don't happen. It's not supposed to happen. Again, you're supposed to have a wristband in order to use the surf shack, and you're supposed to be handicapped to be able to be taken all the way to the beach, or you're supposed to have one of those wristbands to be, you can be taken down to the beach. There's nothing in the ordinances that prohibits that, and then dropped off and allowed to go across the dunes. That's perfectly acceptable, but you should have a wristband, and that's what we're working on trying to police that better.
I have a question for you, Mr. Remington. Where did you get the definition of club from? I don't see that stated here.
That is in section 10.5 of the definitions. Under the current UDO.
When it comes to policing the ability of the shack there to operate, who is doing the policing on TCC's behalf?
Our staff, general manager, and her employees are trying to police that to make sure that it's being used for proper purposes. Also, our vendor is supposed to be policing that through his management people.
Has there been a plan of action previously begun in reference to this same problem that may have existed before you knew about it today?
We have not particularly known that people were being transported down. We have heard that, not been able to have any proof. I have proof now because Mr. Whiteman has said that. But, you know, it's hard to tell when a person is handicapped or not handicapped. And, you know, and we've tried to tell our folks not to do that. So, and we're trying to police it better. So there is a plan, and it's trying to be implemented by the staff of both the vendor and by the Currituck.
I did speak with your general manager of the beach. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he did say that they have no way of telling whether someone's handicapped, so they just give everybody a ride that says they're handicapped, including entire families.
Well, I think there has to be some discretion there, but, you know, if a person, unfortunately, we can't ask them too much about what their handicap is.
That's right.
Or how they're handicapped. And you may have a person that looks able-bodied, but may have cancer or something like that.
Sure.
And they get very winded or tired after walking 10 feet or 20 feet, so.
Sure.
You know, and so they should be asking that question, but we're really not able to ask much more than that if they're handicapped or not.
It just, to me, it seemed kind of odd that you had an entire line of people waiting, and it was mostly young families.
And
So.
again, if it's young families, that shouldn't be occurring. Unless, well, I think of that, in this one, if they're with the Currituck Club, that can happen. That can be done. They can be taken down to the dune, dropped off, and then they can walk the rest of the way out there. It's not just handicapped people. healthy people can do it too. Your question was, are the general public being served? That's where we're trying to police it better, because it should not be people that are not associated with the Currituck Club, those Three Ocean Homes, or the Spindrift community that are utilizing that service.
Well, talking to the driver and not the manager, he basically said they do it for tips. He said he can make about $100 on a good day in tips, dropping people off.
That
So.
they're paid to be out there. Whether they're being tipped by people, I don't know that.
Okay.
Sir, in our part of our packet is this information is passed on to different departments in the county for their review as to whether they have an objection to what's going on or not. And under the review from the Albemarle Regional Health Services, it asks that please submit food establishment interior layout and site plan and submit application to the Health Department for review. Consult with North Carolina Department of Water Resources, the Washington Regional Office, concerning wastewater treatment and disposal approval. Has this been done?
My understanding, ma'am, is that particular comment has been satisfied because we do not sell prepared food on the property. It's prepackaged food. And so again, it's a concession stand. You go up and you can get different items that are there to be sold, like chips and drinks and things like that.
Do you know anything about this bin? Has it been satisfied? Jenny?
Yeah, it's my understanding that they sell prepackaged foods, and the comment really isn't applicable.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
Madam Chair, I'd like to add a clarification to a question that Mr. Craddock asked earlier, if I could do so.
Sure.
The section that Mr. Remington referenced, 10.4.4.6, that's a part of the ordinance that helps us classify uses. So what that does, it takes different parts of the use table and it helps the staff understand, how we classify use so we know what zoning district it's allowed in. An important distinction on that section is that section that was referenced is for parks and open areas that are a principal use. So what that means, for example, is if I built a park or an open area as the primary use, it gives me some of the accessory uses that are allowed with that. So I just want to make sure that the board understands when it said concessions and all that stuff, that's actually concessions that are accessory, for example, to the county's community center where you've got baseball fields and things. So again, that section of the ordinance is principal uses and uses that are accessory to those. So I don't know how applicable that is to the conversation we're having tonight necessarily.
May I respond to that, Madam Chair? The reason that is applicable is for the reason that Mr. Woody just said, and that is that the principal use here, again, is the beach parcel. The beach parcel is why people come there. The beach parcel is why the Currituck Club has that property in the first place, is to get people out there to the beach. Because otherwise, there's Soundside community, which has no beach access, beach use. That club is there as a concession stand for that, like a football field, like a baseball field, like another field, where people are playing, they're enjoying themselves and everything. They go up and they get food and things like that from the other concession stand area. Yes, they're connected by the county access, and so again, we believe they're contiguous, they're used together, and that's the primary purpose, is to enjoy the beach.
Okay, thank you, sir. If there are no further questions from the board, we will entertain comments from the opposition. The first one signed up is Jamie, and I'm going to mess up your name, so I'm not going to say it.
It's Schwegel.
If you would identify, you've identified yourself, will you give us your address, please?
Yes, it is 301 Fayetteville Street in Raleigh, North Carolina. And Madam Chair and members of the Planning Board, I represent Pine Island Property Owners Association, some of whom are here tonight with us, as well as members of the Spindrift Property Owners Association. Our group is in blue, so if you see the people sitting behind me, not all of them are signed up to speak, but they are here to show their opposition to this request. And you've heard a lot from the applicant tonight about what is really on the table. And I present to you that for this board, the issue is whether tonight that you want to recommend the county use its zoning power to allow this southern beach access to become this, a commercialized beachfront parcel using the county land adjacent to it for a profit for one community that prejudices the public's use and ability to reach the public trust waters of our state. Far from being just a simple administrative change or bringing a historic use into compliance, this PUD overlay amendment to bring the surf shack and the oceanfront parcel into the PUD violates some serious policies that the county has set forth. And those policies have a very important purpose. They're to protect the beach and the foreshore for everyone, not to let it be monopolized by one community or another. They're to protect emergency access for everyone, not to let the areas become commercialized and overrun. And we're here tonight to oppose the request because that's exactly what's happened. Over time, there might have been a plan to use this as access, but as that property, that strip, got divided up and sold off for commercial profit and residential profit to other owners, the Currituck Club no longer had that access, and they had left over these two parcels, the oceanfront parcel and the surf shack. And so what they're doing is they're using county land to make up for that and to create themselves as a sound to Oceanside. But the way they're doing it is squeezing 600 guests, or 600 homes, with all of those guests into an area that is simply not designed to support that. And your task is to listen to all of the concerns of the community and consider whether this makes sense from a planning perspective to bring these non-contiguous parcels into this PUD overlay when there's simply not sufficient space to support that use, and that use has been identified and clearly staked out here tonight. And I understand that that process is separated to the extent that the county commissioners will make the ultimate decision. But this is this board's chance to tell the county what is appropriate in the use of their land. And so if you simply approve this use and send it forth tonight, you're telling the county that it's okay to just lump these non-contiguous parcels into the PUD and leave to the county to decide what the commercial use should be. And we submit that these concerns should be wrapped up in your consideration tonight, that you recommend an denial based on the concerns that were outlaid tonight. And those concerns are several. First, the existing commercial use and the use of these two parcels is what the applicant seeks to continue. They want to bring these parcels into the PUD to give themselves essentially more flexibility. But the existing use is already unreasonable, unauthorized, and unsafe. There's insufficient space to support the use that they want to continue here tonight. The commercial use and the commercial valet are not authorized by the county. There is no zone, they're already out of compliance with zoning in terms of running a commercial operation on the surf shack. And that issue is not before you tonight. That's a determination that's been appealed to the Board of Adjustment. The issue is whether that commercial use should be an essentially rubber stamped and move forward. And the commercial use of the valet, again, is not something that's authorized by any of your ordinances. There is a county contract that permits the Currituck Club to carry disabled persons from the parking lot down the access and to the beach, the oceanfront. That is not the same as trucking families and loads of people that come off the trolley in 30 or 15 persons every 30 minutes or 60 minutes, putting those people on a motorized vehicle and then carting those people through a 30-foot beach access where you have pedestrians, you have families, you have emergency vehicles and lifeguards that are trying to all use that same space. And the reason we bring these up is those commercial operations are part and parcel of what they plan to do once the PUD overlay is included and these two parcels are included. It's also improper to include the non-contiguous oceanfront parcel. We heard earlier that there's a discrepancy over, I guess, an interpretation of contiguous. The issue is the old UDO, which is incorporated to the new UDO by reference, had this contiguous requirement. We agree with the county staff's determination that the oceanfront parcel should not be included because it's not contiguous. But more importantly, whether it's contiguous or not doesn't mean it's a good idea. It's not a proper planning idea to include these two parcels in, and it sets a poor precedent if we start having pieces of PUDs sprinkled throughout the county that are allegedly accessory to that use, but nowhere close to it or in proximity. It's just a bad planning practice. You'll hear tonight from some of the members of how the commercial noise and traffic negatively impact the adjacent land. And again, the focus is not on whether it impacts the Currituck Club's property values. The question is whether it impacts the values and the experience of those lands adjacent. That's the classic purpose of the planning purpose and what this board is called to look at. And finally, it improperly uses the public zoning power and the county land for private profit. Simply put, the Currituck Club has based their marketing plan on land they do not own. They are in this position because they have chosen not to go out and purchase access that would suffice their 600 members and all of their guests. And they are in this situation because their original access was subdivided and they didn't go out and seek alternative access. That's an option that's still open to them, and we would submit that the proper decision here is for the county to deny this request and seek to have the Currituck Club purchase their own access. And the reasons that I'd like to go through some of these concerns, and these will be highlighted by the residents. Although the building has been in place for some years, the Surf Shack itself was more of a recent development. I believe in 2011, it was approved or given a compliance permit erroneously. And then you'll see in this amenity guide from 2016, it says new for 2016, the vehicular access grew. And so what we have is this growing volume and use over time. So then in 2016, the violations abounded and the county struggled to enforce them. Here we have a shot at 7:30 in the morning last August. By 11 a.m., the valet is carting people along the beach along with their equipment. By noon, you can see additional carting of people again against the county driving ordinance. And by 1:15 p.m., this is the situation that we had last summer. We've complained about this before. We've talked to the Currituck Club. We've asked them to self-regulate. They haven't done it. And they've come to you to ask to expand that use even further. And we implore the county to not let them do that. Here are some additional shots, but these are from 2017. You can see the golf carts parked along the edge of the access. You can see in the background there a pedestrian walking along and how many vehicle trips have gone. You can see how they're parking on the dunes in an unauthorized area, and children are mixing with these vehicles. They're unloading people in the middle of a very crowded beach. And this is the oceanfront parcel that they want you to include. And just briefly, this is inconsistent with the county policies. Those state in media, the policies are to prevent overcrowding of land and avoid undue concentration of population. A major concern for the Corolla area is for the over-commercialization of the community. Most of the year-round residents and many of the cottage rental owners wish to minimize the amount of land zoned for commercial purposes. Those policies are to protect and conserve coastal resources. The land use plan says something similar. Incompatible or poorly planned commercial encroachment within or immediately adjoining existing residential areas shall be prohibited. And that's what we have here. We have an encroachment. It's also inconsistent with the factors that were listed just a moment ago. Number 5, and these are from your staff report, the commercial designation is incompatible with existing and proposed surrounding uses. And residents will be here to talk about those adverse impacts that negatively impact the nearby land. You see some of those policies there. Oh. Uh-oh. Okay, and as you hear the resident testimony, I'd like you just to consider it's improper to include the oceanfront property because it's non-contiguous. There are significant noise, traffic, and crowding from commercial uses that negatively impact adjacent land, and the public zoning power should simply not be used in this way. I'd like to reserve about 30 seconds at the end to wrap up and hear from other residents.
Thank you. Next signed up is Roger Kraft.
Good evening. My name is Roger Crafe. House is 442 Myrtle Pond, and we purchased the house in 1999 because our family liked the look of the beaches, clean, free from commercial activity. It was a big drawing card for me and my family. We've seen many changes over the years and considered Corolla and the Pine Island community a very enjoyable and family-oriented experience. We would hope this would continue. We're not against the public beach access. We're not against it at all. It was there when we bought the house, and we did not have a problem with the public beach access. Our concern is that the county please enforce enforce the laws and rules consistently and uniformly, or make new laws that fit the interest of the Corolla community at this access point. That's what we're trying to say. The law should apply to all and not just a few or one HOA. An HOA which dominates the parking, access, and traffic in this area. It is significant. It's so significant that hardly anybody can get there and park a car. Safety is an important element for us, and we think the commercial activity of the southern beach access is adding to the risk of public safety. Public beach is for all, and we should not allow access and commercial activity for one community as we are seeing at the southern beach access. The county is selling beaches that are clean, uncluttered, safe for families, and non-commercially impacted. That's not what we see at the southern beach access. The Currituck Club Beach Valet, golf cart access, renting umbrella and beach chair setups, and the surf shack in a residentially zoned area and moving people to and from the parking area to their umbrella stands does not serve the greater public interest. I have actually witnessed driving on the beach. We see gators carrying people to and from their umbrella stands. We see it all the time. We see transactions which are available on the beach. I can walk up there, can I rent an umbrella on the beach? And they say yes. We see illegally parked vehicles on the access road, as Janie mentioned. We see the renting and setting up of chairs and umbrellas up and down the beach, 200 to 300 yards north and south from the access. Where does this commercial activity stop? Selling ice cream, snow cones, air braiding, condos, etc. What's next? That's what we're trying to say. The commercial activity is an impediment to a good sounding beach, good area for the family. Once again, thank you for the time to speak to you and express our interest. We hope we provide some information to you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Richard Henson.
Hi, my name is Richard Henson. I'm on the Pine Island board. I have a house in Pine Island, 467 North Cove Road. I first came to the Outer Banks in 1953 from Greensboro. I was born and raised, and we built our house here in '94. I want to leave you with just one thought. The southern beach access, that strip of land, that public access point that you heard people talk about, that southern beach access is an accident waiting to happen because of the excessive overcrowding on the beach. I was out there Friday, I saw two kids almost get hit by a lifeguard driving an ATV. Don't get me wrong, the lifeguard was just doing his job, working his way through all that clutter. Kids were running around like kids do. They both headed for the same open spot, and they almost got there at exactly the same time. So how many near misses is it going to take before something bad happens or we do something about it? I've seen situations where kids get disoriented because of the massive overcrowding there, get lost in the surf, and if that happens, something bad can happen in a blink of an eye. And think about getting a rescue vehicle out onto that beach, down that access way, that public access way, with those illegally parked golf carts on the side, gators coming back and forth, and all the people on the beach that have to, including those blue boxes, that have to be moved out of the way so that rescue vehicle can get out there and go north or south and come back again. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that the surf shack and the beach parcel that you've heard talked about contribute, facilitate, and in their own way encourage this unsafe overcrowding. We had on Route 12 a few years ago predictable and avoidable tragedies. And I think the potential exists here for tragedy as well, but we can avoid it. And so for that reason, I respectfully request that you deny this application. Thank you for your time.
I have a question for you, sir, before you exit. When you spoke about the lifeguard, was that a county lifeguard or a TCC lifeguard?
It was a Corolla Beach Rescue lifeguard, and I want to hasten to add, because of his alertness and his ability, he was doing his job, he was doing the right thing. It wasn't neglect on his part. It was because of the crowding. It was Corolla Beach Rescue, I think. All right.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
And Mr. Craddock, those lifeguards work under a county contract.
Thank you.
Eddie White.
My name is Eddie White. I live at 102 Woodbury Point Harbor. I am the Pine Island Property Owners Operation Manager for the last 11 years. And I've been monitoring the situation for that whole time. I've been asking to access see how far the umbrellas go this way, so how far they go that way. And they get set up early in the morning, and they go, it spreads both sides. Now, to go to the point of the access of the golf cart parking on the public access, I personally witnessed someone almost drown the other day, and I saw a four-wheeler drive up, I saw a truck, ambulance, fire truck. Those are 4 vehicles that would be going to that point. And I would tell you they would not be accessing that beach on that picture that was just up a minute ago. And I have seen in the past that access open wide, where a vehicle could go north, could go south. And what I saw recently, there's no way a big ocean rescue vehicle could access that beach in a safe manner. It's a 30-spot parking lot with 600 houses using the parking lot and the trolley system. And it's just an overburdened access in that community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul, is it Manberg?
Yes. Thank you for listening. My name is Paul Manberg. I live at 481 Spindrift Trail. I representing both myself and the Spindrift POA. Within your packet, you have a letter that I submitted as part of the packet in response to the minutes of the community meeting, because I felt that the applicant had significantly misrepresented the degree of community objection to this proposal. And I've heard a few things today also that I would like to say that I do think that has misrepresented what the situation is. I want to emphasize to all of you that our concerns about this is not about access and allowing access of the public to the beach. What we are concerned about is the commercialization of what is a residential neighborhood there. I will give you 3 examples of, for each one of those 3 parcels that are affected, where they are definitely having an adverse impact. For the surf shack operation, you saw a very nice picture of there being, nobody there, everything's nice and clean. The reality is, in the summer, there's lots of people there, there's lots of garbage there, and where that garbage ends up is in the properties that adjoin it. Now, the ordinance says there should be a 100-foot setback between a commercial operation and residential area, and there is definitely not between our properties. The property that abuts the surf shack, directly behind the surf shack, has been on the market for 2 years, and it has been unable to sell because of the problems of that operation. They finally sold a house in February of this year for over $100,000 below the assessed value. So it might be nice for them to say that they haven't heard any complaints. We have the adjoining property that has, had to be a distress sale this year. So their operations, which have expanded in the last couple of years, have definitely hurt adjoining abutting properties. Now, the operations of the valet service on what should be a emergency right-of-way and public access path. As you saw it characterized, it should be considered similar to Route 12. That's exactly our concern, because it has become like a Route 12 with a constant loop of gators going up and down that road, and as well as all of the golf carts that are being used for people. So if you look at that access, it's changed the character of the community. It used to be that people could walk down from the public parking and could walk down to the beach. Now they have to dodge all of those vehicles that are going there. Those vehicles also serve as a problem to prevent public safety from reaching the beach because of their activities. And finally, on the beach parcel, that's currently they're selling their umbrellas there. They're not renting umbrellas. They are renting space on the beach. The way their operation works is that for a week, people rent space on the beach, and at 7 o'clock, prior to 7 o'clock in the morning,
Shortly.
umbrellas are set up, and they are rented whether the person comes there or not. And so our concern as a community is that we're not having access to the property in front of our houses in Spindrift, because those are all reserved from.
Mr. Manberg, I'm going to stop you, and I am going to allow Jamie to ask for 30 seconds. So I'll give you that opportunity now.
Thank you, Madam Chair, I appreciate that. I'd like to just summarize what the residents have said if we had a little bit more time, and that we've seen that significant drop in the rental of the adjacent properties, not just one homeowner, but several. Spindrift also had a owner that came, saw the commercial use of the beach, and had a owner actually rent a different house further away from that ocean front, paid for both of them. That's how significant the problem was. So you can imagine how much that would have cost that resident and how much that must have been disappointing. We've also had residents that come and say, I'm not only not coming back to your house, I'm not coming to Pine Island, I'm not coming to Currituck County because I can get this in New Jersey or Delaware or somewhere that's only an hour from me. And so for these reasons and all the reasons that the residents expressed, we respectfully request that you deny the request for both parcels and send the message to the county that this type of use of these commercial areas adjacent to residential use is just not appropriate.
Thank you. If you would remain there just for a second. Does the board have any questions for the opposition?
Yes, I have a question. The private piece of parcel that's owned by the thing that's on the beach, by the Currituck Club that's on the beach. It's my understanding that all of the beach is public access. The ocean front up to the high water mark.
That's correct, ma'am. The underlying ownership changes.
Right.
But the public has a public access, a public easement to access any part of the beach. We're not disputing that.
Up to the high water mark.
Right. We're not disputing the public trust doctrine or
Okay.
the public's right to access the beach. It's the nature of the underlying use of that land that's causing the problems here. If you
Where they're
transfer-
staking out their tents and putting up the umbrellas.
If you transfer that use, to my knowledge, there's no other part of the county that is zoned commercial use for the beach. There's no other parcel all along
Right.
the county that's commercially zoned. And so that's the issue.
Yeah, because I live up in the off-road area. So you talk about overcrowding and you talk about the access for safety equipment and so forth like that. It's bad.
Right.
And it's even worse up there because more people are going up there rather than here. So, I mean, again, these people have the right when they go on the beach, walk on the beach, to go as far as they want, north or south, to set up their own personal umbrellas and so forth. And what you're saying is that the Currituck Club is staking out property early on and renting those spots.
That's correct, ma'am. We're not disputing the right of anyone to walk onto the beach in this exact location with whatever gear they want, however many family members they want, to go in either direction. That's clearly allowed. But that's not what's happening. There's a staking out of property in either direction, and there's carting many people onto the beach, and there's commercial activity within the area that they now want to have commercially zoned. And so it's a slippery slope. And the solution is get the access in another location or disperse it in a way that it was intended to.
Thank you.
Ben, if I could, didn't we, when we discussed this, didn't you say there were no commercial beachfront properties or beach properties?
I don't believe there are. No, that most of the communities. There are some communities that have parcels that are zoned commercial that are close to the beach, but generally the beach itself is an open space, which is zoned residential.
Okay, thanks.
Any further questions? Thank you. At this time, the applicant has 5 minutes of rebuttal.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to comment on some of the things that the opposition said. We are not trying to expand the use of these areas in any way, any shape, or any form. The only reason that we're here is because the staff said that what we were doing, which has been permitted by the county for 20-plus years, was now, for reasons unknown to us, inappropriate, because they said it was a commercial use of the property. Again, I've gone through the definitions as to why we don't believe that that's the case. This is not a commercial use. We're essentially selling concessions just like they do at their beach club. we're not asking for any different treatment than they are. The fact that this is a public beach access means that everybody has the right to go down that beach access and enter onto the beach area. You know, when they use, Ms. Schwiegler has used, she's used comments like, the volume of patrons transported to the surf shack prevents suitable, sustainable forms of public access because it interferes with the public's access to public trust water. Think about that for a minute. Basically, we are the public. We're bringing our people over there. We're doing it by use of trolleys so that there's not parking issues and things like that. We're putting them out on the only access that is available to our people. You know, if you ask Pine Island, they've got 10 accesses that are privately owned between phase 1 and 3 of their property. And they haven't offered any of them to the public. You know, I would like to know what they would say to that because, you know, right now, there's only one place that the Currituck Club people can go through. And that's what we're doing. But tonight, the issue that you all are dealing with is should this property be made part of the Currituck Club? And it absolutely should be. It's been treated as being part of the Currituck Club for 20 plus years since the Currituck Club was developed. It's been permitted to be able to be used for these purposes for 20 plus years. And so you should recommend approval to the Board of Commissioners that these two parcels come into the property. So, you know, what I hear from these residents, and with due respect, that, you know, the photographs do show people out on the beach, and they show tents, and they show umbrellas. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Most of the pictures that were showed, you can't tell if there's a violation or not in those pictures because, you know, as far as I understand the beach driving ordinance and things, again, the Currituck Club has the right to drive people up to the dune line, drop them off, and then they can walk out to the beach. And then now that the beach driving ordinance has been changed, people can drive on the beach in certain areas. We do not stake out properties, but it's my understanding that there are companies that can go out there and they can put rental umbrellas and things out there for people if they've paid in advance. Now, I don't know, I've not been out there, so I don't know if people are doing that and paying in advance or whether there are people that are selling. The Currituck Club is not doing that. We are not out there soliciting people to put, you know, to purchase umbrella space and things like that. What we're asking, we're not asking for an expansion. We're not asking for anything to be done differently. We're just asking to be able to continue to use the property in the way that it's been used for 20 plus years. And we were told that if we submitted this application, that would be the way to do that. And so we've been trying to work with the county on that process. I will say this, the comment about this being an accident waiting to happen, 20 plus years that the Currituck Club has been out there, they've been utilizing, you know, they've been valeting people to the beach for that long. It's not just recently. They may have more organized process of doing it now, but they've been using golf carts out there to do that for 20 years. This is not an accident waiting to happen because we have managed that well. We have taken the time to make sure that our people are safe and that they're doing things in a proper way. This board should recommend approval of this application to the commissioners and should also recommend that both parcels come in. I would just ask you to look at the zoning map that Ben put up with the staff stuff. If you look at that, the idea is to have PUD property next to PUD property. When you look at that PUD overlay, the PUD overlay, basically both of those parcels would be contiguous to PUD property. There'd be no difference, and so therefore it is contiguous, and we ask you to include both of them. Thank you for your time. I'm again available to answer questions.
I have a couple of questions for you, Mr. Remington.
Yes.
Is the Currituck Club 100% built out at this time?
It is not. I couldn't tell you how many lots are available, but it is, you know, it's significantly built out, but there are still lots and spaces available.
What are the total amount of lots within the subdivision's entirety?
611.
And you don't know at this time how many are occupied with homes?
I do not.
Mr. Craddock, in our packet, It says there are 200 undeveloped lots
Thank you.
still exist in the Currituck Club. Would you agree with that? Okay.
So if I'm not mistaken, just using normal mathematics, it's still 1/3 available to be built out, meaning there could be potentially more population that would be utilizing the services of the trolley transportation and the gators back and forth. Would you say that's correct?
That would be correct.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Does the same vendor that operates the Surf Shack operate the beach umbrella operation out there?
Yes.
How about the emergency services operation?
Yes.
Same vendor.
But that's through a contract with the county,
I understand. It's the same vendor with all three.
as far as I know, yes.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir. At this time, I close the public hearing. Open for discussion among the board.
Mr. Woody, would you read the definition of contiguous for us? Or Jenny?
Yeah, we got to pull it up, so you got to give us a minute.
Also, would you be able to delineate on a map and show us where the public beach access is in relation to the TCC property?
Sure. I'll start with the definition of contiguous. Abutting directly or immediately adjacent to a boundary or separated only by a street, railroad, or public utility right-of-way. And you asked about the map of the county parcel. Can you see the mouse there? This is the county parcel here.
It's just south of the beach area.
And it goes all the way onto the foreshore up to the mean water line?
It does.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Woody, would you say that Mr. Remington's description of what contiguous is false compared to the definition we have?
I do agree with Mr. Remington on some things. It doesn't seem like it tonight, but I don't agree with his definition of contiguous, no. I'm not going to say it's false. I'm going to say I don't agree with it. Actually, let me back. I don't agree with his interpretation of our definition of contiguousness.
Is the current use of the shack on that property a legal use as it stands today? As an accessory use?
Under our letter of determination, our opinion is it is not as it stands today.
There were also comments made about Pine Island PUD not being contiguous. Would you disagree with the statement that was made by Mr. Remington about that?
I have a complex answer for that. A long answer to a short question. When Pine Island PUD was originally created, significant acreage was given to Audubon by the Slick family and Turnpike Properties. And there's kind of a northern pod of the Pine Island PUD, and there's a southern pod of the Pine Island PUD. And on the original approval, when they were separating out Audubon land and developable area, along NC 12, they left a little strip of land, and it was probably no more than, I'd say, 10 feet wide maybe, and it connected those two pods. So the original approval of the Pine Island PUD was contiguous because there was a little strip of land that connected each element of the PUD. Now, if I go pull out the current plan now these plans get amended many, many, many times over 20 years. If I go into the office and pull out the current plan, what used to be Audubon oceanfront property is now 9 or so houses called Pine Island Reserve, and that little 10-foot strip of land that connected those two pods is gone. So on the current Pine Island PUD, they are two distinct pods. Now, what I would advise the planning board is I'm not aware at any point of the Board of Commissioners ever voting to remove that connecting piece. So how that came to get removed from those plans, I have no idea. I don't believe there was ever an action by a elected body to remove that connecting piece. I suspect that some CAD operator for one of these local firms just inadvertently left that little connecting piece out. So that's my long answer to your simple question.
Mr. Woody, do you believe that the contracts that exist now are legal in terms of the transportation to and from TCC to the beach access area and the land that TCC owns?
I believe the county only enters into legal contracts. So yes, I think the contract's
Good
legal.
answer. Good answer.
Do you believe also, Mr. Woody, that the permits that were issued for the shack were a bad idea on the county's behalf?
I don't think they were a bad idea, but I think those 3 permits were issued in error. I think that was done inadvertently by the staff at that time, but I just think they were issued in error, and that's my opinion.
What is the error? Should they have not been issued at all?
I think I think the staff always assumed, and these are staff that aren't even here anymore, but I think the assumption was that those tracts of land, the surf shack property, I think we always assumed it was in the Currituck plan unit development. And that's easy to get to that conclusion because it's owned by the association. So I think at the time, and I think in good faith at the time, the Currituck Club representatives that requested the permits, I don't think they were trying to hide anything. I think they felt the same way. So I think those permits that were issued were I think they were done so in good faith by the staff and the developer at the time. I just think in hindsight, number one, that parcel is not in the Currituck Club PUD, so you can't make that connection as it being specifically accessory. And I think when you read the definitions of the old ordinance very closely, I think it's questionable even under that if we apply the definition correctly. But I don't think any of that was done with maliciousness. I think it was just a situation where it
They were
just
intended to
happened.
be an accessory building and
Correct.
wasn't.
Correct.
Thanks.
I want to ask you a dumb question. Go ahead. Tell me there ain't no such thing as a dumb question. Made me feel better. Okay, if I drive down to Corolla and I go to this spot that's on the east side of 12, I'm allowed to park my car in that parking area. I'm allowed to get out of my car and walk up that stretch of accessory road, if you want to call it that, and I can go on the beach, put my blanket down, and go on about my business.
That's correct.
Correct.
I don't have to have a bracelet
No,
or anything else unless I want to use their transportation.
Yeah, where the parking lot is, and the narrow strip that goes to the beach, which is 30 feet wide, that is Currituck County property. That is public property that everybody in this room has access to.
I thought that, but I wanted to be sure because I don't want to have to go get a bracelet.
But Madam Chairman, as a matter of fact, since I go back and forth across this very often, from very early on Saturday and Sunday morning, there are no parking places in that parking lot. And then the people start parking along the other side of the road, the west side of the road, and all over the place and on the grass. And even though there's lots of no parking signs, there are no just drive over there at 11 o'clock on Sunday and find a parking place.
I ain't dumb enough to go over there on a Saturday or Sunday. You know, I've lived here all my life. I kind of know.
But now, the concern that I have here, too, is that many of the residents or the visitors in the Currituck Club are coming over there early in the morning and parking in that parking lot also, which thereby limits the amount of public parking over on Currituck Beach, period.
But I don't think that's a concern because they have a right to do that just as much as anybody else in the general public. So,
Well, I know, but I mean, I'm just saying a fact.
yeah.
You know.
And it would be nice if they'd park at the Currituck Club and get on over with the trolley. Yeah, I understand. Okay. Any further discussion?
Yeah, Madam Chairman. I'd like to hear what Mr. Whiteman saw on the day he visited the TCC site?
Just for clarification, Mr. O'Brien and I both went down there.
Okay, thank you.
The umbrellas, I saw probably at least a dozen of them on the Spindrift property in various locations, all with reserved signs and chairs. There were probably about a half dozen on the opposite side. I don't know who owns that. Pine Island. And then there were probably a few scattered in where the Currituck Club owns. So they do put up umbrellas, and the entire time I was there, we were there probably 2 hours, and we asked the lady down there, when you guys put those up in the morning, do they come in and they use them right away? Or she said, no, we reserve them. They can come here anytime during the day. So they are actually just reserving a spot on the beach for somebody who's paid for it, even though they're not there.
And is it a true statement that you were able to purchase items from the shack?
Absolutely.
When in fact you're not a TCC owner?
We were also able to, Jeff went down and asked if he could rent an umbrella and a chair, and he was told yes, so, without a bracelet. So it is being operated as a commercial business right on the beach.
How long were we all there?
A couple hours.
Couple hours. Did you, or what was the extreme that you noticed of the transportation of the gators north and south on the beach, away from the right-of-way?
It's probably once every 15 minutes or so. Would you say?
10, 15.
Yeah, 10, 15 minutes.
And how far north and south? 100 yards?
It depended. Mostly with the handicap, there's a drop-off spot right maybe about 10 yards in, would you say?
Yeah.
So they would drop most of them off there. But on occasion, I don't know if it was just somebody tipping well, they would go right out onto the beach and drive, 100 yards down in either direction and drop somebody off.
Looking for an empty spot?
Most of the time, what
Looking
they did
for their
was
reserve spot.
they're looking for the reserve spot. Most of the time, they had these beach carts, and they would put all their equipment in the beach cart and walk out with them. But on occasion, they would drive people all the way out to wherever their umbrella was. Say probably 2 or 3 times, I think. And the gator got stuck several times right there in the dune. So it was just pouring the sand down the dune.
Mm-hmm.
And we were there midday, probably till about 2.
Yeah. We got there, I think, 12:30.
So it wasn't like it was 6 o'clock in the morning and nobody on the beach. I mean, there was a significant number of people on the beach.
Anything else that you noticed?
Just the golf carts parking up and down the access way. There were, 6 of them, 8 of them?
There was 8 at the highest point, and the beach manager said there's nothing they could do about it. Even though they're their carts, the management tells them about it when they rent the carts, but there's nothing they can do once they park them there.
Right.
And I asked him, I said, well, since you have staff standing right next to where they're parking, can't you just tell them you can't park here? And he said, we've been advised not to tell them that.
Yeah.
During the time that you were down there, did you have any of the Currituck Sheriff's Department on the ATVs patrolling in that area?
No, we had a fire marshal or fire chief.
Yeah, fire marshal
showed up.
Because, it's my knowledge that in that entire strip from the Dare County line up to the off-road permit area, that there are no vehicles allowed on there at all. And it surprises me that even handicap is is an exception to it.
According to was it an amendment or, Ben?
There's a beach driving. There's an amendment to the Code of Ordinances.
So at certain times of the day,
I think
right?
in May, maybe.
No, I'm talking about for like when they're dropping off umbrellas and stuff. I think it's like 6 to something.
I believe it's 6 to 7:30 in the morning, and then again at 5:30 to 7 in the evening. They can drop them off and pick them up. Any commercial entity or PUD management can drive on the beach during those hours, and then the PUDs actually have a specific exception that they can keep a vehicle on the beach between 7:30 and 5:30. each PUD within their beach area.
For access by handicap?
No, not for access by handicap. That is a contract just with the Currituck Club to transport disabled persons over to the beach. Did I miss something?
You know, because when the Currituck, when you're under contract to the county can drive, county employees can drive on the beach all day.
I understand.
So when you're under contract with the county for whatever purpose, like ocean rescue, for example, that gives them the authority to drive on the beach, just like Currituck's club ability to transport handicapped people. That's under a county contract.
Any other questions?
Mr. Wooding, if Currituck County Compliance Officer were to witness persons being dropped off by these gators that were not handicapped, what could be the legal ramifications for the contract holder?
I mean, obviously, the county could provide 30 days' notice to terminate the contract. That's one option. If there's beach driving occurring that's not covered by the contract, then in terms of enforcement, the county could issue a civil citation to whomever it is that's driving on the beach during those non-designated hours.
But the county does have the ability to rescind the contract.
With 30 days' notice, that's correct.
Okay, I think this is one of those horses that we've talked about in the past. We about beat it to death. So at this time, I'm going to call for a motion.
I would motion to deny PB 9449 as it is inconsistent with the goals and objectives of the land use plan, does not demonstrate a general community need, adversely impacts surrounding area, and conflicts with the public interest, and is not in harmony with the surrounding properties.
We have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I second.
Take your pick.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your
Madam
hand.
Chairman, discussion. I would almost ask an amendment to that if, and I agree with the motion, but if the board decides to approve it, that we would encourage them to use the opportunity to negotiate with the Currituck Club to try to minimize the impact that is now being felt on the beach, whether it's with the gators or whatever, and try to alleviate concerns if that's appropriate.
Respectfully, I would stand with my motion.
Ben, can we make a suggestion to the Board of Commissioners regarding what Mr. McCauley just stated?
You could, after you vote on your motion and take your official action, you can certainly add that
Sure.
as a
Yeah.
comment that we can put in the meeting minutes. I mean, they want your advice on things, so I think that's appropriate after you vote in the motion.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, no.
I would have went with staff recommendation.
Okay.
So you're voting no?
Yes.
Okay. The motion carries. We have a majority. At this time, I'm going to take just a 2 or 3 minute break so the people that would like to go can go. The next item on our agenda will be the Moyoc Mega Site. So if you need to stand up, stretch your legs, I'll give you 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, our next item is PB 17-05, Moyoc Mega Site Master Plan. Consideration of the Moyoc Mega Site Master Plan. The Moyoc Mega Site Master Plan, a lot of words there. No. Is a long-term economic development plan for 3,000 acres in the Moyoc Township. The plan covers an area west of North Carolina 168 between the North Carolina-Virginia line and South Mills Road. The proposal balances commercial uses such as retail stores, medical offices, and even locations for high-tech industrial business with a variety of residential areas. And Donna, this is your baby.
Who said?
You did.
Thought it was Ben's.
Madam Chairperson, I would like to introduce Carol Collins from Kimley Horn. We've been working, the county's been working with Kimley Horn, Carol, and some associates of his for, I guess, perhaps the last 18 months to 2 years on this mega site. So this did come out of the Moayak Small Area Plan as far as this area was designated as an employment center. So then the county took it to do a further in-depth analysis of the potential for an employment center in the Moayak area. So I'll turn it over to Carol, and he can go through his presentation.
Well, let me just say one thing. I'm glad to know there was another Carol in the room, because I heard y'all say earlier you kept saying something about Carol, and I thought, well, I don't know anything about that. So I was a little nervous.
You didn't get the memo that you were doing a presentation?
And no.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Yes.
Yep, is it working?
Oh, okay, it's just not showing the picture. Watch behind you. I'm just gonna- Okay. All right, good evening, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Carol Collins. I'm with Kimley Horn Associates, 11815 Fountain Way, Suite 300, Newport News, Virginia. And as Lori and Donna shared, we've been working collectively with the county. Really, it's going on almost 2 years now between the market feasibility study and now getting into the Moayak Megasite Master Plan. So we're happy to be here tonight to keep the ball moving down the field, if you will, with hopefully the adoption of the land use plan conceptually as it goes forward. So going through the presentation, a little outline, I want to give some folks some background about the project, about the Moayak Megasite. Did a great job describing the boundaries in the area in which it's located. A little about the market feasibility study and the recommendations that came out of that. It led to, let's do a land use plan, let's do a master plan for the site. Some next steps associated with that. Some key elements of the plan. So from what was in the small area plan to some things that we heard from the public information meetings that we had and collective stakeholder meetings, those came up as well. Master plan approach, program development, get an idea of what the master plan looks like, as well as some land uses, general layout of the site, some gateway development, proposed UDO changes that really will need to take place in an effort to support the plan, the land uses and the associated densities, and then some next steps as we move forward with the project. As you touched on earlier, sort of the general boundaries of the site. Again, Virginia State line to the north, North Carolina 168 to the east, South Mills Road to the south. A little over 3,000 acres, and more recently, as we've gone through this master planning exercise and looked at some other areas and adjusted the boundary slightly, we're right around approximately 3,500 acres that are under consideration as part of the project. Some next steps or market considerations was to create a vision for the mega site through a master planning exercise. Wanted flexibility, although we needed to set a vision and some goals and some ideas of what land uses would go where. There needed to be some flexibility with the project, as well as there was the intent to protect some of the prime acreage for those catalyst or opportunistic developments that might come along. Diversify the residential product, introducing not just single family but also some townhouse condominiums, apartments, multifamily into this area of the county. Establishing a branding or marketing effort going forward to understand more about the site. You'll hear later on and more recently in the report, one of the things that came up from the public is the word or the phrase mega has some folks a little nervous. So that's one of the things that's the next step coming out of this. Public participation for policy incentives, financial incentives. The other part was to offer shovel-ready sites. How do we attract potential developments to the area, and it's having those sites teed up for folks to come in and take an opportunity for them. And the other thing is persistence and patience. When we started the market feasibility study and going into the master planning exercise, one of the things that we talked about all along the way is this is a 25 to 30 year horizon when it comes to planning. to those initial developments that come online, to the roadway network infrastructure, the utility infrastructure, and the development as a whole. It's essentially a 25 to 30-year process for this to come to fruition. So the planning approach, a market-driven plan here. Again, we did the market feasibility exercise to understand what's Currituck County, what's Moyock's role within the metropolitan statistical area of Hampton Roads, and how does all that fit. So looking at that and what the opportunities were with different types of land uses, different types of densities, the attractiveness of the area, and what that tie is between Currituck and Hampton Roads, but also community-based. We had a couple stakeholder meetings, public information meetings about the project, getting some feedback. What did they like about Moyock that was great? What were some things that people, thought was missing within the community? Some services that would help the community be more desirable going forward, and we need to be including in those types of land uses going forward. With that, and from the market feasibility study, we came up with a summary of developable acreage. So not all 3,000 or 3,500 acres is developable at the end of the day. Some of that's based on the market and how much could realistically be accommodated from a development standpoint, be it residential, be it office, medical office, industrial type uses, and retail opportunities too, accounting for the roadway infrastructure, accounting for just general open space. Is one of the things when we looked at trails in parks within the community, as well as wetlands, stormwater ponds, so on and so forth. So those all had to be incorporated into the plan at the end of the day as we move forward. Going back to the stakeholder piece, there's some plans out there. Some stakeholders have already put together a lot of thought into some potential developments. To the Talisa Lake residential development, the sand pit sort of right there at the center can become potentially a nice water feature as a part of that development. General layout to the north there for some potential commercial, some neo-traditional residential development in and along with some frontage along 168 with the commercial piece, and then the potential for some office, medical office back behind that. And then similar approach with the commercial one down there in the lower left-hand corner of the slide. So those were some things that we were taking into account as we were moving forward into that master planning process. There's been some thought, there's been some effort that's gone into what could this turn into, and it also demonstrated a real interest in the mega site and the potential for development in and around the area. So also going into the master planning process in and of itself and program development, obviously we need to take into consideration the physical characteristics of the site. What are some physical constraints we need to be conscious of at the end of the day? What are some surrounding area land uses we need to be aware of, patterns of development, and then keeping in mind what's the vision, what are we going to change, what do we want to change about development and development patterns in and around the area. And then getting into some regional trends, regional initiatives, and some infrastructure improvements. And I bring up the roadway infrastructure improvements from looking at 168 potentially in a different character to the idea going back to the comprehensive transportation plan and what this east-west connector might look like between 168 and getting over to 17, to the idea of a bypass around Moyock, and then the I-87 connector. What's that alignment going to look like? And we went back and forth and came up with some different concepts with alignments. But it was a factor as where you started to lay out, the site in general, the master plan, and trying to account for these roadway infrastructure improvements that were already being considered to what kind of roadway infrastructure do we need to support sort of the scale of development anticipated for the area. Then we get into some of the key objectives. This goes way back to when we were in the market feasibility study, and then being re-emphasized as we got into the master planning process in and of itself, and talking to the community. This goes back to that community-based piece about employment center, and even brought up in the description of the project. It's about job creation, creating an employment center, enhancing or growing the tax base. There's a lot of folks live in this area of the county. It's a great residential community, but how can we generate some more tax base, get some people to stick around, if you will, create a place for kids to go off to college, but come back and have a place to work, come back to at the end of the day. A live, work, play environment is also, a phrase that we heard. Some references to Town Center, Virginia Beach, but there's some other places besides Town Center, Virginia Beach, where it can be live, work, play, and those different options of land uses can coexist amongst one another. Pedestrian friendly and make it feel like more of a destination at the end of the day. And so from that market feasibility piece to going through the land use exercise, this is a reflection from a land use perspective, sort of the general layout of the mega site with the various land uses that are taken into consideration. Again, for the commercial pieces, the front 168 to some of the office, medical office, and that you'll hear me say it, but it's because there's some flexibility. We want those terms to be somewhat interchangeable because office being brought up in discussions initially, but we've also seen some interest from some of the healthcare providers in the area expressing an interest in and around the mega site. Some opportunity sites, again, closer to 168 with the office and industrial a little bit to the south there, and then taking into account the residential pieces, the Talisa Lake, you see the general layout there with the residential and then some other lower density residential to the back. The other piece, the roadway that you see sort of going across the top there is the east-west connector. And then sort of toward the back of the site are those more industrial warehouse type potential developments, indoor sites. And again, with them, that's the potential link to the port at the end of the day. But with that piece, the warehouse distribution, the link to the port, they want access not only to the port if it's, Norfolk, Newport News, Portsmouth, but also being able to get access over to the interstate system to the west. So here's the general layout, where we are with the master plan, the land uses. You can get into seeing some of the acreages when you get an opportunity to look a little more closely. The general idea of the roadway network infrastructure there to account for that, as well as some ponds, recognizing through the conversations the stormwater piece that needed to be accounted for at the end of the day. A little bit more detailed piece, the mixed-use core. That when you saw the one graphic that reflected the commercial component in the office, medical office, this is a more detailed flow of that in a large area plan of what that might look like. Again, just conceptual nature, the general idea of what those land uses would look like between what would front 168 transitional land use to the idea of potentially multifamily and or a different type of single family product at the end of the day toward the back of the site. And here's just again an enlarged area plan that shows those economic development site or that potential catalyst or opportunistic site with the office industrial. Ended up with a little bit of a realignment of Newtown Road, new connection over to some residential to the west there. Gateway corridors, as you saw some of the roadway infrastructure, one of the things we also did is we developed a master plan and looked at, what are the typical sections for those roadways? What might those, need to look like? Should they look like as we consider traffic volume, but also that walkable community, thinking multimodal at the end of the day, landscaping, safety from trees, raised median to multi-use trails along the sides of the roadways. One of the other things that we looked at was dedicated or designated utility easements. So, when the utilities are coming in, they know exactly where to go at the end of the day along these different arterials. But these pieces and parts also become sort of gateway corridors. You're setting the tone, the vision for expectations for when development comes into the areas. There can be a shared effort, if you will, for the investment as it relates to roadway infrastructure improvements, to where development can occur, but also the landscaping component. And again, that sense of arrival for some of these facilities. If it's 168, how that character might change in the future, to the Central Parkway, which is sort of that primary spine road that runs right down the middle of the site as you look north south. One of the big things as far as the master plan moving forward is we can talk land uses and potential development potential and different products and so on and so forth. This is different, if you will, from the types of development patterns and densities that the county's accustomed to today, as it relates to single-family densities, to commercial development, so on and so forth. And one of the things, as we're going through this process, we brought it multiple times, and we're not hiding it, is the UDO needs to be updated in an effort to accommodate the plan at the end of the day. So there needs to be some revisions. There needs to be a piece in the current code that can accommodate the future land use plan. So as that can move forward to promote this vision. It's not the same old way of doing business, if you will, because the densities will be different. And that's understanding that that's a little change in mindset, but that's what it'll take to help this come to fruition, and recognize as you go back and look at those key objectives, in order for those to happen, that has to be the change of mindset and the way of doing business. The other thing with changing, with updating the UDO to accommodate the Moyock Mega Site Master Plan, is the intent is to make the entitlement process a little bit more easier, a little bit more streamlined at the end of the day, to make it clear, to make it predictable. So as developers are coming in the door and they have an idea and a thought, and if they're being consistent and understand development standards or design guidelines, that staff and the county can help with that process and make it a little bit easier at the end of the day. And so the recommendation is, so within the current UDO is the planned development mixed use district, and within there you're allowed to create sort of its own little zoning code, if you will, for a particular area, so it would be set up specifically for the Moyock mega site at the end of the day. And then that way you don't make it too complicated with other pieces and parts of other districts, but it would dial in specifically to the Moyock mega site and make the process a little bit easier. So then just talking about next steps moving forward with the master plan. The most important part initially coming out of the gate is to adopt the Moyock Mega Site Master Plan as it's prepared with the land uses. General idea, again, they're not set in stone, but it's setting that vision. It's setting sort of a path to go forward as far as the site and what potential development would look like associated with the mega site. Incorporate the Moyock Mega Site Master Plan into the Imagine Currituck, the future land use plan. So that is currently in the process of being updated. Here's an opportunity to incorporate the Mega Site Master Plan and the associated uses into that effort. The UDO section, again, as we talk about the UDO, the need for that to be updated, for that code to be written, updated so it can accommodate the plan to go forward. Begin to market the plan. As we talked before, market the plan, and it's minus mega at some point, but figuring out whatever that new name turns out to be, but start to market the site. I will share very briefly just from our work at Kimley Horn and work with land development folks and other developers, keeping an eye on what's going on in Northeast North Carolina, to articles that are in the pilot. Their interest is piqued, and they're looking to see what's going on, what might happen, what are the opportunities, and we think it's probably a year to 18 months out before things might be in place from a regulatory standpoint to start accommodating development as it relates to the plan. But sort of that keep tuned in, if you will, and we'll let you know more. Keep the community engaged. At the end of the day, property owners, brokers, the Moyock community, kind of goes back to the marketing piece. Let people know what's going on. Be very open and transparent, which staff has done all along the way, so that they can stay engaged. And most of it's been very positive about the plan and the direction that it's going, particularly for the community. Development strategies. In that case, as we look at it, we're not trying to start to build all the infrastructure to serve the back of the site. You got to be smart fiscally and from a development standpoint as far as what those development strategies might look like, potential phases, so that those investments can take place over time and make sense at the end of the day. maintain catalyst or opportunity sites. You don't want to give away the prime land, right up front. If there's someone that's already come in and has an idea what they want, that's fine. But, you never know when someone just might pop in and say, sure, would like 300 acres, and it's already been carved out. A formal wetland delineation. One thing you may have noticed in the master plan, there's some areas that show wetlands in and around. We weren't quite sure or confident enough to show potential development in those areas because we were going off the data that we had. So one of the things that we talked about for those particular landowners is probably in the best interest going forward to perform a formal wetland delineation. A master transportation plan, master stormwater plan, water distribution, and sanitary sewer. And then again, the cost improvement estimates. And then sometimes there's the opportunity to get creative when it comes to identifying alternative as well as traditional funding mechanisms to help support the project going forward. Because it is a big undertaking, but you don't want to do all of it at once. And there are some strategies, partner partnership, private partnerships, as well as traditional needs. So that's the recap. Real quick on the mega site. That's all I have.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
What are you looking at? In one of your diagrams there, you referred to a Lake Talisa.
So there was a...
You don't have to find it. I want to know where you came up with that name.
Toulouse-Lautrec.
So we worked with different stakeholders. That was one of the concept plans that was shared with us, and it was, the name was Lake Talisa. So
What does it mean?
apparently, it's an Indian name. So that's my understanding. It's an Indian name, so that's where that name came from. So maybe I got too much in the details, but that's where that came from. At the end of the day, was the concept for residential development, and it already had a potential name for the site.
Well, if it's an Indian name, that's okay. Because that's what Moyoc is.
Gotcha.
So we need to be consistent.
I think it's a Cherokee name, though, not a Algonquin name. So there would be issues there with the,
Oh, the
which,
tribes?
Yes.
Oh, well. Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I was just,
Carry on.
Please, go ahead.
I was curious, you said the reception has been positive for the most part.
Yes, sir.
What were the reservations, if any, if you can recall?
Stormwater, just kind of, hey, let's figure this out,
Mhm.
because, obviously drainage and kind of the existing addition, it's okay, it's all ag. We understand there's some drainage constraints today, but as this would come online, we need to get a better handle on the drainage component. A school site with the residential development, and that's where there is a school site that's been identified post, some of those preliminary conversations about, hey, we sort of already feel some of the pressure within our existing school system, some of the schools. Let's go ahead and start thinking about the next school site within the county. So schools was another one. Didn't really get into too much on transportation, and I'm trying to think of some of the other things. But those are
Okay.
kind of the primary things. Anything I think Florida or Ben from a negative concern standpoint?
Traffic in general.
Yeah.
Traffic on Currituck Highway and C 168. There was a concern. Just
Isn't that a given?
pretty
Yeah.
much, especially
Is what
during
it
the
is.
summer. Yes.
Not a question, but a comment. A few of the board members served on the Moyoc Small Area Plan, and I would say, Carol, maybe a 60-40 split, those in favor of maintaining a rural environment over those who wanted controlled growth. But in both cases, I would say that your idea of rebranding the word mega would probably go a long way towards swaying a lot of those folks on both sides. And I would say a lot sooner than later. It's from looking at social media over the last 3 months, I would say that, that's just a big, it's a huge pill to swallow when they see the word mega and they're they want controlled growth or a rural atmosphere. They're not thinking, they're thinking much bigger than town center. They're thinking, Chicago-style growth, and so the sooner you can rebrand that.
That's a fair comment. In fact, Larry and I had a conversation earlier this afternoon, just along those lines. And Lori as well. That's one of those things we need to get addressed. And it's actually in the report. It's not in here, but it is in the report. The detailed next steps is, as this gets adopted at this level and hopefully at the board level, is to pick a new name within 60 days if possible. That doesn't include mega.
We'll grab you about 20 people for a focus group, and we'll get them in there.
Run a contest.
Madam Chairman, I would like to hand out an email I received today from a landowner in Moyoc who could not be present.
All right. While we're doing that, I'll make a comment. I'm just sorry I'm not going to live to see this. Make it sooner, could you?
According to Facebook, you guys are starting construction next week.
Right. I don't think so.
Just the front one's fine. That's just the remainder of the
Oh, okay.
to the top one.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
One other thing to point out too, in your planning board packet that you received in the mail, it contained the report, which also had a detailed appendix in the back, which were mainly examples of other communities and how to manage certain types of areas within the site, such as transportation, utilities, and even an employment area. The document you had in front of you that was sitting on the table when you came in is a revision that actually removed most of that information, since it's somewhat confusing, that you might actually think that you're adopting that language as well, and you would not be.
Thank
It's
you.
more for staff.
Any other questions? Thank you,
Spent all that
sir.
time reading that, falling
I'm
asleep three
sorry,
times.
I did too.
Cherie, was there anybody signed up to speak either for or against this project?
Oh, yeah. I was reading the paper.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, I figured somebody.
I know there are some people here from Moyoc. I would like to give you an opportunity to speak just a few minutes, if you would, questions or concerns or whatever, if you would care to. I knew there was somebody out there that would.
How you doing?
Identify yourself, sir.
Oh, identify. I carry my, okay. I'm Mike Zimmerman at 111 Covey Lane in Moyoc. Couple concerns with the neighbors that I have, and in generally, like I said, throughout social media, mega, 3,500 acres. Right now, Moyoc has 9 subdivisions being built. 9.
Yep.
Where are those kids gonna go to school? Now you're talking about adding. I haven't seen a new school since Eagle Creek and then Sharboro, but a high school, 9 subdivisions being built just in Moyoc. That's a lot. That's a lot of area. That's a lot of houses. It's a lot of people. And now we're talking mega. And when you hear that word mega, yeah, you talk about the east-west corridor. I worked for the last 8 years in this county doing deliveries. I'm going to tell you, Old Swamp Road, South Mills Road, whatever you want to call it, if you're going that direction, you're only going to go so far. They can't widen that road. How's it going to connect to 17? I'd like to know how he's going to do that. I really would. And then my only question, somebody said, I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought the gentleman stated that this was in accordance with the small area planning, but it's not in accordance with the UDO. To me, that just doesn't jive. I sat on the small area planning group in Moyoc. Okay? This is not what we looked at. And like you said, it's that 60-40 split. That's all I had.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Any further discussion with the board? Any questions for staff? I neglected to do that. Do you have a rebuttal, sir? Okay. Any other questions or discussion from the board? Okay, I'll call the public hearing to an end and be willing to entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion, Madam Chairman, that we adopt the Moyoc Mega Site Plan because it promotes orderly development. It's in the public interest. It controls growth and would be an asset to our county by having this.
We have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second. Go ahead.
This one in the end.
Whoever.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Motion passed.
Make a couple of post-vote comments real quick.
Go ahead.
Ben, when we were doing the small area plan, the issue of schooling actually came up a couple of times. And if I'm not mistaken, they follow that pretty closely. And as they approach the demarcation line, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, that's when the state steps in and requires you to. Oh, there you go. You might be the one to talk to us about it. Go ahead.
So the way the schools actually function with their capacity, or the way we manage that is the schools set the capacities for,
Right.
the school system sets the capacities for each one of the schools. And they tell us how many students each school can manage through the campus, which includes the library.
Trailers and the library, yeah.
Well, there's only so much the library, cafeteria, and your auditorium can manage. You can add all the classrooms you want, but if those three, and maybe one other item, if you can't, gym, I think, is the other one. If you can't physically manage them in that capacity, then that's it. I mean, you have to increase that size. So school system provides us with their capacity numbers. They also provide us with their current daily enrollment. And then we take the number of proposed subdivision lots, and there's a formula that's based off of a study that's done, which we've actually taken that study and those numbers, and with the school system's help, pulled out all the students for each one of those subdivisions, and those numbers are pretty darn close to being right. So our formula seems to be correct.
Okay.
Then we take all of those numbers and see where we're at based on current capacity and planned capacity. Right now, we're okay with the planned subdivisions. As we add new subdivisions on and they receive preliminary plat approval, and it does take them some time to go through that full process, the school system will probably have to look at that. There are discussions right now with class size. The state is mandating a different class size, so that's going to affect
Higher or lower?
Lower. So that will affect our numbers.
Okay.
So we're closely looking at that. Now, obviously, when it comes to schools and funding and building schools, you have to reach a certain capacity before you can build a school. You can't
Sure.
build a school when you're at 95% capacity or even 100% capacity. There has to be some tolerance in which you accept those mobile classrooms and trailers so that when you build a new school, you have students to go in there.
Sure.
So that's kind of how it works, and we
So
are
for a year or
looking
two,
at it.
after you hit the 100% capacity, and you
have
start to go
design and
over,
build. You're going to go
those
over.
for those few years, those students will probably suffer a bit, and then
There'll be more students in that school.
Sure, yeah.
Now, there are capacities, and then that, like I mentioned, there are operational capacity, campus capacities, where you don't go over those numbers, which are going to be a little bit higher than classrooms can manage. But
does that answer the school question you had? Okay, sorry.
The other thing has to do with funding as well. You know, like the state will only fund based on a certain number of positions based on, you know, your average daily membership, and then it's up to the county to make up any differences.
Thank you, ma'am.
Can I ask one question on that? How does the charter school over on Corolla fit into that?
They're not in
Part of the
our
numbers.
Currituck County school numbers. Now, Knapp Early College is, because I guess that's more of a,
I don't know what early.
It's a public, yeah, it's not private.
yeah, it's, but they're not calculated into the school system numbers.
Because I see that since we've had the charter schools, what, 5-7 years, something like that, they've gone up in capacity every year, and they're using the church facilities on a steady basis now, because they've outgrown the little one-room
Right.
school. So that's just not in
It's
the
not
Currituck
included
planning.
in any of our calculations and capacities.
Do you know what the high school numbers are?
On the top of my head, I do not. They are, according to the school numbers, not at capacity yet, even with planning. Now it's probably nearing with our planned capacity. We're over 85% on some of our schools.
Really?
I don't know which ones. Now, with the elementary schools and middle schools, you can change district lines to adjust increases, say in Moyock or Shawboro or in certain areas. You could shift those lines. Those generally are not popular, those decisions to send a
Been there,
student
done
who,
that, Brother went one way.
yeah, 15 miles in the opposite direction generally are not supported by communities, but are sometimes necessary in order to
At least in the short term.
manage the students' numbers. High schools, we have the early college that's capped at a number of students, and then the high school is, as I understand, we're nearing going back to a 3A school. If not, will be added to a 3A school next year, changing from 2A to 3A, which we've kind of teetered back and forth with.
Okay.
Okay.
Madam Chairman?
Yes,
I
sir.
have one other item before we move on to our next agenda item, is Mr. McCauley had made comments after Mr. Whiteman's motion, if he'd like to, along with the rest of the board members, to make suggestions to the Board of Commissioners.
Please, yeah.
We did not do that right after.
Do you have that tirade, that comment they made to send to the commissioners, or I need to restate it?
I don't believe I understood it, nor did the recorder understand it.
Okay, well, what,
And I have some additional ones too, Mr.
Okay.
McCauley, after you're done.
if the board chose to approve one or the other, both, that they use the opportunity, there's no time to negotiate with someone than when they want something from you. I learned that past experience. So, we would hopefully strongly encourage the board to take that opportunity to settle some of the differences that currently exist and put some limitations that are enforceable. They didn't like our crabbing proposal because it wasn't enforceable. And when you have people driving on the beach, whether they're handicapped or not handicapped, and when they're going 500 yards in one direction and 1,000 in the other, or whatever the case may be, there has to be an agreement and penalties there, if it's abused.
I know regarding the parking, I spoke with the sheriff's office tonight before coming to the meeting. He said it would require a county ordinance to restrict parking on that section of the access, and they would also need to put up a sign and enter into a contract with a towing company with the towing company's name on the sign, name and phone number on the sign. And then anyone who parks there illegally can have their vehicle towed, their golf cart or whatever. So that's the no parking signs that are there now are really not enforceable. So something for the county to think about, an ordinance for that.
I'll say some other suggestions I have for the commissioners, and this is just a general statement, but it goes along with this other item that came before us tonight. Is number one, we need to hire more compliance officers on the mainland side and the Outer Banks side in order to enforce the current rules we have now. As we continue to create rules, they just kind of going to get lost in the system if we're not out there enforcing them. So that I would say that would be one item we need to work on. We need to enforce our existing rules, the UDO and the ordinances, either through Planning and Community Development Office or Sheriff's Department, whatever it takes in order to enforce what currently exists now. And it may be a good idea for the Board of Commissioners to direct the Planning and Community Development Office to monitor their TCC's compliance with the contract that exists with the county as far as them transporting people that are not handicapped back and forth. If we have enough of those complaints that are witnessed by county staff, perhaps, then that's another way to negotiate with that and or revoke their contract that they have with the county. And also direct the Sheriff's Department to enforce parking once those items Mr. Whiteman mentioned are in effect. But we're missing out on protecting our people, protecting
That's right.
the environment. We're missing out on the chance to create income for the county through fines and other fees that would be involved for tickets that are given for those persons that are breaking the law, and we need to do that as soon as we can.
Okay, these are not a formal motion. They are suggestions to go with the motion to the commissioners. So at this time, I'd just like to have the board's approval for those suggestions to be included with the motion.
Absolutely.
Everybody that, if it says that's okay, aye?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposition?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay,
Can we take a short break?
sure.
Sure.
Short break.
Sure.
Okey dokey.
To the house cleaning, huh?
All right, PB 17-04, Currituck County, the 2017 housekeeping amendment to modify and correct the UDO.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is truly a housekeeping amendment for 2017. This corrects and modifies several inconsistencies in the ordinance, and I'll just briefly go over each one of them. Item 1 deals with the planning board. Recently the planning board membership was reduced from 9. We will slowly migrate to 7, and as our 8th member completes that unexpired term, then that position will not be reappointed. So the language there supports the 7-member board that will be appointed by each one of the Board of Commissioners. There will be 2 at-large planning board members, and the rest will be from each of the voting districts. The second item deals with a correction to the state reference in our ordinance to the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. Their new name is the Department of Environmental Quality. So all the references in the ordinance to the new department name will be modified. Item 3 is a section in the ordinance that deals with code enforcement, and it clarifies what can be appealed with a notice of violation, and it identifies that a civil penalty cannot be appealed. The only thing that can be appealed is the actual notice of violation. Item 4 is a section that identifies driveway placement, and this is we're adding in language for double frontage lots. This would require that driveways, not only on corner lots as it currently reads, but also on double frontage lots to access a street with less traffic to the maximum extent practical. Item 5 is for community meeting requirements. In the event a person holds a community meeting and they in turn change the plan drastically, and there are significant changes, this would require them to go back to the community and present that new plan to them before submitting to the county for review and approval for any item that requires a community meeting.
Who determines significant?
We have a list in the ordinance that defines that. Item 6 is for, this is more of a standard for parking related to expansion and enlargement of homes where you're increasing the number of bedrooms. We have a parking standard that is based on the number of bedrooms. So this just clarifies what has been done in the past, that is a unit of measure when determining parking. Item 7, this is an amendment to the section dealing with the flood certification and allowances, and this puts us in line with the model ordinance for the state. Currently, our language says that you cannot have a manufactured home in a VE zone. The model language, or the language in the model ordinance, actually supports replacement of homes in the VE zone, and that now allows that. Item 8 is an overall modification for incorrect references, and that deals primarily with gasoline. So it's a section reference and a table reference for gasoline sales, home occupation, land application of sludge and septage, outdoor storage, and outdoor display of sales, and those are identified on there as well. And it's just section and table references. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have in 5 minutes.
What's this right here? Told you I was going to use it.
Anybody have any questions? All right.
Pretty cut and dry cleaning up.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cut and dry.
Yep.
Well, we gave her 10 minutes.
I only used 5.
She didn't use it all. All right. With that being the case, then I will entertain a motion.
I made my motion for tonight.
What is it? I'm motion to approve PB 1704 as staff has it written.
We have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, everybody take a breath. We're going to begin announcements, and I would like to start, if y'all don't mind. As we all probably know by this time, this has been Woody's last meeting with us.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I'm bummed.
Yeah.
Ben has been a great help to me personally when I came on the board, because the knowledge that I had about all this stuff was pitiful. And he's been, and all the staff likewise, have been so helpful in explaining stuff to me and not treating me like I was a real dummy head. And when it came to the point of being nominated for the chair, I was a little nervous about that. But Ben assured me, he said, you don't have to be an expert on anything except how to guide a meeting. I'm like, that I can do. So Ben, I personally wish you very well. We're going to miss you terribly, I think. And Lori, are you taking his place? Do we know yet? Uh-oh,
She's on
can't
the
say.
spot.
Sorry. If that was an inappropriate question, just tell me shut up.
No, it is an appropriate question. I will be assuming the duties of the planning director until a final candidate has been named. To my knowledge, we're not going to advertise for a final candidate.
I wanted to know.
Please apply.
No. That ain't happening.
So that's kind of where we are.
So if there are no walk-ons,
We don't have any other people waiting in the wing, but
He's going to hold the spot for Ben when he comes back.
I'm keeping his seat warm until he decides the mountains are just too high and he misses the flatlands.
There you go.
Well, we wish you well in your position, and Ben, again, it's been wonderful having you, and I can't do but anything but wish you the very best.
Speech.
Yeah.
Speech,
It's been
they're
great.
saying, speech. You got 2 minutes.
I'm just going to say thank you, and I'll keep it simple. I'm not one for goodbyes, really big production. So you got the team right there. You're good.
We do. We have a good team. They're very.
So
very
where are you going, Ben?
Very knowledgeable.
The city of Asheville.
Oh, okay.
Asheville.
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 Beautiful, beautiful Asheville.
Yeah, I knew you were from that area originally.
Excited about it. But I'll miss Currituck, and I'll miss the planning board. We've got a good board. Had one for several years now.
Well, goodbye. Okay, carry on with announcements, please.
I think most of you heard my announcement earlier regarding my son. I just got back from China. They beat the #1 Chinese high school basketball team.
Woo.
And they were honored by the mayor of Chesapeake last week. And they went in with a 5-man team. Tallest guy is 6'2", and the Chinese team, I think was the shortest guy was 6'3" or 6'4". Most of their guys were around 6'7". They had 19 members on their squad, and we beat the national team.
Right.
So
Congratulations.
they made it to ESPN, and they did a really good job.
Good job.
Congratulations.
Devin Whiteman.
I'd like to make a short announcement. I think that sometime, hopefully in the near future, Lori will be able to present information about the land use plan that we're working on back in the background there. We've been trying to get it on over the last couple of meetings, but the way things have worked out, it just hadn't been possible with the complexities of the items we had before us. But hopefully it'll be in the near future when she can bring that to us.
Yes, we will do that. We'll hopefully get that on the July agenda. Meanwhile, please do CurrituckLandUsePlan.com. Check that out. If you were trying to do documentation up on that website. So if you have any questions, email me or call me about the land use plan. It's a long process, but we're getting in the short roads, I think, now. And that will come before you guys, just like
I
the mega site
didn't
master
use
plan
it
for
for one.
recommendation.
It's been about a year and a half now.
Huh?
About a year and a half, yes.
I don't drink purified water. I drink Deer Park.
Anybody else? I want to thank you all for coming tonight. We almost had 100%. We were close. But I appreciate it so much. And if there's nothing else, this meeting is adjourned.
Aye.
Thank you.